Doctor Strange is directed by Scott Derrickson and stars Benedict Cumberbatch as Stephen Strange, a very successful but arrogant doctor who, after a debilitating car accident, can no longer use his hands. This is life now. You know, that would suck. And when Western medicine fails him, he turns to Eastern medicine and discovers this monastery of sorts in which he learns about magic, sorcery, and many different dimensions he never knew existed, as well as a mystical war that is raging, and he tries to find his place in between these two warring things. It's my best way to describe this movie. I gotta say, I gotta give the writers of this movie major props because Marvel has once again introduced a very strange and obscure comic book character into their MCU and made it work. I thought Thor in Asgard was going to be hard. I thought Ant-Man was going to be weird. One of the reasons this character works so well is because of Benedict Cumberbatch. In fact, it is the biggest reason. He really gives a lot to this role. He has the perfect level of arrogance, comedy, wit, and confusion, especially confusion. But what I loved about his character was how passionate he was about bettering himself. He's someone who takes his intellect very seriously, arrogantly so, but at the same time, he's also someone who just wants to learn everything he can to get better at whatever he wants to do. It's one of the reasons why his character was such a successful physician, and it's one of the reasons he becomes such a successful sorcerer, because he wants to better himself in every way he can, and so that aspect of the character I really latched onto and really appreciated. What really blew me away in this movie were the visuals. This was a very remarkable 3D experience. I do actually recommend that you see it in 3D. Normally that's not something that I focus on, but the 3D definitely added something to these city-bending, world-moving sequences that really made my jaw drop. The action sequences in this film are fantastic. Save for one thing, I don't necessarily think Scott Derrickson handled some of the hand-to-hand combat sequences as effectively as he could have. It's not shaky cam, there was just a level of intensity missing from the more simple action sequences that were given to the incredible visual effects heavy sequences, which, by the way, I say visual effects heavy, but I never really looked at something and was like, man, that's such a computer image, I don't buy any of this for a second. These are Class A visual effects, some of the best I've ever seen, and yes, it is going to draw comparisons to Inception and The Matrix, that's inevitable, but Doctor Strange as a comic has been around for a while, and this aspect of that world has been in those comics for a while, but it's clearly drawing inspiration from Inception, people jumping on walls and the gravity-defying elements. It's just that there's a lot more of it in this film. I love Chiwetel Ejiofor as Mordo. He was a lot of fun. Tilda Swinton was very good as the Ancient One. I thought she was great in the movie. It would have been nice to see that character portrayed by someone who was actually the ethnicity of the character in the comic, but I'm not going to sit here and complain about it because she was really good in the movie. And my boy Mads Mikkelsen, oh my god, I love him. He was so good in this movie. His character could have been given a little more, though. I would have appreciated a little more depth behind him. Another thing I really appreciated about this movie is that it does feel very different from the other films in the MCU. Certain elements of the third act, it's extremely different from the way most of these big superhero extravaganza visual effects, beam in the sky, people blow up everything movies. Now, I love superheroes, I love comic books, I love comic book movies, but it was just nice to see one that fits into the world that has the similar warm color tones and tongue-in-cheek humor and visual effects and amazing action sequences, but it was nice to see one that genuinely felt of its own world. As for negatives, I feel that the first act is a little bit clunky in setting up the character and getting to the place where he eventually meets the Ancient One. The second she touches his forehead, from that moment on, I was in. I was locked into the movie. It was a really fun ride. But getting to that felt a little blocky, just a little bit. The pacing could have been a lot better. There's some humor also that doesn't always work. I would say it's about 70-30 for me in regards to humor and jokes that hit. And it does kind of rush through some of his training aspects, and you feel like there should be a little bit more. There are comparisons to be made to Batman Begins, because Bruce Wayne in that movie travels to this faraway land and learns all these mystical magical things, and in this one it's a lot more literal in regards to the magic. But in Batman Begins, it was just paced better, and you felt that world building. In this movie, it kind of wants to get to Doctor Strange getting his red cape, the levitation cloak, and everything being really cool and awesome. And it's cool to see everything happen, and you're excited that it's getting to that point. But I do feel like his training was rushed just a little bit. The movie also suffers from a lot of exposition. Now that's one of the biggest flaws, I would say, of this movie, is the need to explain so much to us, because it's such a weird, different world from the other MCU films that there are many scenes in which our hero is standing there listening to people explaining things to him, and we're gonna need some of that. And I wouldn't say that it wasn't interesting. I would say that it was mostly always fun and compelling to watch and learn about this world. It just does get really bogged down in exposition sometimes. As for visual effects in this movie, everything was mind-blowingly great, except for one visual effects character that I was just kind of like, that's a cartoon. I don't believe that that's real. Also, I really liked Rachel McAdams in this movie. She plays the love interest of sorts of Stephen Strange. They have some off and ons together, but I liked how he had to keep going back to her at certain points for help. It added a lot of humor to the movie that mostly worked very well. In the end, Doctor Strange has incredible visual effects, a very cool hero, a very fun backstory that does get bogged down in a lot of exposition, mostly working humor, and a character that I can't wait to see more of. It's not one of the best in the MCU. I wouldn't say it's one of the worst. It's not as good as Civil War or Deadpool this year, but I had a lot of fun with this movie, and I loved Benedict Cumberbatch as this character, and I'm excited to see him in other films. I'm going to give Doctor Strange a B+. Guys, thank you so much as always for watching. I look forward to hearing about what you guys thought of Doctor Strange. Guys, thank you once again, and if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.